A ruthless Lycan King, heartless, unbreakable, feared by every pack, suddenly collapses in the dirt, his wolf dying inside him, his body betraying him in the worst way possible. For years he's ruled with ice in his veins, until one forbidden night, a quiet orphan maid slips into his chambers, places her trembling hand on his chest, and steals the softest kiss on his cheek while he sleeps. And everything changes. He wakes up crying, actual tears streaming down that chiseled, battle-scarred face for the first time in centuries. His voice breaks as he whispers the words that will haunt you. "What did you do to my soul? I haven't felt myself in years." But here's the twist that will rip your heart out. The girl who just saved him is the daughter of the parents he ordered killed years ago for a handful of gold. Chapter 1. The Kiss That Awakened the Beast. In the ancient heart of the Silver Moon Pack, where moonlight bled through the canopy like silver blood, the throne had always been a death sentence. No king had ever ruled beyond 6 years without the curse claiming him, either death in savage battle or the slow, humiliating fate of his wolf, leaving him impotent, a shadow of the beast he once was. The pack had grown wild and restless without a true ruler, until Elias Stormfang rose like a storm made flesh. He was magnificent, towering, broad-shouldered, every line of him carved from granite and fury. His eyes were molten silver, his growl a weapon that could silence armies. They called him the Heartless Lycan King because he had no mercy, no softness, only iron will and ruthless power. He seized the throne in a river of blood, and for 6 full years the curse stayed silent. He ruled unchallenged, his pack stronger than ever. For the first time in centuries, real joy flickered in those cold eyes. He threw the grandest celebration the pack had ever seen, roaring bonfires, endless feasts, howls shaking the mountains. "The curse is broken," he declared, voice like thunder wrapped in velvet. "I am eternal." But fate laughed in the dark. Weeks later, Elias collapsed without warning, his massive frame slamming to the earth like a felled oak. His guards carried him to the royal chambers, a cavern of dark furs, flickering torches, and the heavy scent of pine and power. From that moment, his wolf betrayed him. The primal fire that once roared through his veins guttered out. Impotence gripped him like iron chains. Nights that once burned with passion became cold, empty voids. He lay there, a king reduced to silent torment, whispering to the shadows, "I haven't felt alive in years." The palace corridors were hushed that fateful afternoon. Liora moved like a ghost through them, her simple linen dress whispering against the stone. She was 22, an orphan since the age of 4, and had learned early that silence was safer than words. But her eyes, large, luminous, the color of captured moonlight, betrayed a quiet fire no one noticed. She carried the moon goddess's voice in her blood, a soft, divine hum she didn't yet understand. It made her dreams vivid, her instincts sharp, her heart ache with unspoken longing. She had always watched the king from the shadows. His raw beauty haunted her, the sharp jaw shadowed with stubble, the powerful hands that could crush stone, the way he moved like a predator who owned the world. In the quiet hours, she'd whisper to the stars, "If only I could heal him." Today, fate chose her. The head housekeeper thrust a bucket and rags into her hands. "The royal chambers, the king sleeps. Be silent. Touch nothing but the dust." Liora's heart hammered as she pushed open the heavy oak door. The room was vast, shadowed, lit only by low torches and slivers of moonlight slipping through tall windows. Dark furs draped the massive bed. And there he lay, Elias Stormfang, the Heartless King, sprawled on his back, chest rising and falling beneath a thin sheet. Sweat glistened on his bare torso, the ridges of old scars mapping battles won. Even in sleep he radiated danger and power. She swallowed hard. The air smelled of him, pine, smoke, wild masculinity. Her hands trembled as she began to clean, dusting the carved headboard, wiping the stone floor. But her gaze kept drifting back to him. His lips were slightly parted. His dark hair fell across his brow. The sheet had slipped low, revealing the hard planes of his abdomen, the trail of dark hair leading downward. Heat bloomed low in her belly. She shouldn't look. She shouldn't feel this, but temptation overwhelmed her. She set the rag aside. Her bare feet padded silently closer. She stood beside the bed, heart thundering so loud she feared it would wake him. Slowly, reverently, she reached out. Her small hand hovered above his chest, then settled gently over his heart. The thunder of it beneath her palm made her gasp, strong, alive, wounded. She leaned down, hair falling like a curtain around them. Her breath brushed his skin. Then, in a rush of forbidden longing, she pressed the softest kiss to his cheek, lips lingering, tasting salt and warmth. "I wish I was your mate," she breathed, voice barely a whisper. "You'd claim me every night, moaning my name like a prayer." The words slipped out raw and aching. She froze, horrified at her own boldness. Then she fled, cheeks burning, heart racing, slipping out and closing the door behind her. But the world had changed. Elias woke with a sharp gasp. Warmth flooded his veins like wildfire. His wolf stirred, growling low, alive, hungry. Colors sharpened. Emotions crashed over him. Joy, fear, life. His cock stirred for the first time in months, hardening, aching with sudden, fierce need. Tears, hot, unstoppable, spilled down his scarred face. Not tears of pain, but of awakening. What is this?" he choked out, voice rough with disbelief. "I haven't felt myself, truly felt, in years." He surged upright, sheets pooling at his waist, his silver eyes blazed, the room felt different, charged, electric. He summoned every servant to the grand hall. His presence filled the space like a storm cloud. Towering, bare-chested, clad only in loose trousers, he paced like a caged beast. His voice carried a new tremor. "Who entered my chamber? Who touched me?" Silence. His growl deepened, raw with desperate need. "Who kissed me?" From the back, a small, trembling voice. "I did, my king. Please, forgive me. I swear it won't happen again. If you cast me out, I'm an orphan. I have nowhere to go." Elias's silver eyes found hers. The hall seemed to vanish. He stepped forward, towering over her petite frame. Yet his voice cracked with wonder. "What did you do to my soul? I haven't felt myself for years." He drew closer, breath ragged. The scent of her, wildflowers and moonlight, filled his lungs. His body reacted instantly, heart pounding, arousal throbbing painfully against his trousers. "Who are you?" he demanded, voice low and dangerous. Tears shimmered in her eyes as she answered. "Just an orphan. My parents were killed when I was 4, by a king, over some river gold." The word struck him like a blade through the chest. He was that king. Years ago, in his heartless hunger for power, he had ordered their deaths for a handful of gold dust. Guilt slammed into him, silent tears tracing his face. He said nothing, couldn't, but the secret burned like acid in his veins. In that shattering moment, he reached for her. His large hand cupped her cheek, thumb brushing away her tear. "You will never be cast out," he rasped. "You are mine." He pulled her against him, hard, possessive. His mouth crashed down on hers in a kiss that was both punishment and salvation, fierce, hungry, devouring. Liora gasped into his mouth, hands clutching his shoulders. His tongue claimed hers, tasting her sweetness, and a growl rumbled deep in his chest. When he finally pulled back, both were breathing hard. "Tonight," he said, voice dark with promise, "you come to my chambers, and I will show you exactly what it means to be claimed by your king." He released her, but his silver eyes burned with possession. The pack watched in stunned silence as the Heartless King walked away, alive, awakened, and utterly undone by one forbidden kiss. But in the shadows of his mind, the secret festered. And in the quiet of dawn months later, Liora would find the faded portrait beneath their bed, and the single word scratched on the back, "Forgive." Chapter 2. Claimed under moonlight. The grand hall emptied in stunned silence, the pack dispersing like shadows before dawn. Elias did not look back. His long strides carried him through the torchlit corridors, every muscle coiled with barely leashed hunger. Liora followed a few paces behind, guided by 2 silent guards, her bare feet cold against the stone. Her heart pounded so violently she thought it might bruise her ribs. She had expected punishment, banishment, death perhaps. Instead, the Heartless King had kissed her like she was air, and he had been drowning for centuries. They reached the royal chambers. The heavy oak doors swung open, revealing the same vast room where she had stolen that forbidden kiss only hours earlier. The torches had been lit higher now, casting golden flickers across the dark furs and the massive bed that dominated the space. Moonlight poured through the tall, arched windows, silvering everything it touched. Elias turned. The guards bowed and vanished without a word. The door closed behind her with a soft final thud. He stood there, still bare-chested, trousers slung low on his narrow hips, every line of him radiating raw power and barely contained need. His silver eyes burned as they raked over her, the simple linen dress clinging to her curves, the flush on her cheeks, the way her chest rose and fell too quickly. "Come here," he said, voice low and rough like gravel wrapped in velvet. Liora's legs trembled, but she stepped forward. One step, two, until she was close enough to feel the heat rolling off his body. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. She didn't. His large hand cupped her cheek, thumb tracing the line of her jaw. His touch was surprisingly gentle, almost reverent. "You have no idea what you've done to me," he murmured. "One kiss and you brought a dead man back to life." Tears shimmered in Liora's eyes. "I only wanted to comfort you. You did more than that." His other hand slid to her waist, pulling her flush against him. She gasped at the hard length of him pressing insistently against her belly through the thin fabric. "You woke my wolf. You woke me." He lowered his head, brushing his lips against her temple, then her cheek, then the corner of her mouth. Each kiss was slow, deliberate, like he was memorizing her. "Tell me to stop," he whispered against her skin. "Say the word and I will send you away. You will be safe, protected, but you will never be mine." Liora's hands rose, trembling, to rest against the hard planes of his chest. She felt his heart thundering beneath her palms, the same thunder she had felt when she kissed him in his sleep. "I don't want to be safe," she breathed. "I want to be yours." A growl tore from his throat, deep, primal, possessive. Then his mouth claimed hers. This kiss was nothing like the desperate one in the hall. This was slow fire. His lips moved over hers with devastating patience, tasting, teasing, coaxing her open. When her mouth parted on a soft moan, his tongue slipped inside, stroking hers in a rhythm that made her knees buckle. He caught her effortlessly, lifting her against him as though she weighed nothing. Her legs wrapped around his waist on instinct. He walked them backward until her back met the cool stone wall beside the window. Moonlight bathed them both. Elias broke the kiss only long enough to drag his mouth down the column of her throat. His teeth grazed her skin, sharp enough to make her gasp, gentle enough not to break it. "Not yet," he rasped. "The mark comes when you're ready to be claimed forever." He carried her to the bed and laid her down on the dark furs like she was something precious. Then he stood over her, eyes blazing, and slowly unlaced his trousers. Liora's breath caught. He was magnificent, thick, hard, already weeping at the tip. The sight of him sent a rush of heat between her thighs. He knelt between her legs, hands sliding up her calves, pushing the hem of her dress higher. Calloused fingers traced the soft skin of her inner thighs, spreading them gently. "Look at me," he commanded softly. Her eyes locked with his. "I want to taste you first," he said, voice dark with hunger. "I want to worship the woman who brought me back from the dead." He lowered his head. The first swipe of his tongue made her cry out. He licked her slowly, thoroughly, savoring every shudder, every gasp. His hands pinned her hips when she tried to arch away from the overwhelming pleasure. He growled against her, the vibration sending sparks up her spine. When she came, it was sudden and shattering, her fingers tangling in his dark hair, his name torn from her throat in a broken moan. He didn't stop until she was trembling, boneless. Only then did he rise over her, bracing his arms on either side of her head. His silver eyes were almost black with need. "Are you ready?" he asked, voice hoarse. Liora reached up, cupping his face. "I've been ready since the first time I saw you." He surged forward in one slow, deep thrust. They both cried out. He filled her completely, stretching her, claiming her. For a moment he held still, forehead pressed to hers, breathing hard. "You feel like heaven," he rasped, "like home." Then he began to move, slow at first, long, rolling thrusts that made her see stars. Then faster, harder, the bed creaking beneath them. His hands gripped her hips, angling her so every stroke hit that perfect spot inside her. Liora's nails raked down his back. His growls turned into ragged moans of her name. Liora, Liora, fuck my Liora. He shifted them suddenly, rolling so she straddled him. His hands guided her hips, teaching her the rhythm. Moonlight poured over them, turning their skin silver. She rode him with abandon, head thrown back, hair spilling like midnight. He watched her with something close to worship, hands roaming her breasts, thumbs circling her nipples, then sliding down to where they joined. When she came again, clenching around him, he followed with a roar, hips bucking, spilling deep inside her as he shouted her name to the moon. They collapsed together, tangled in furs and sweat and moonlight. Elias pulled her against his chest, arms wrapping around her like he would never let go. His lips brushed her temple. I haven't felt this alive for in centuries, he whispered, voice thick with emotion. Liora nestled closer, listening to the steady thunder of his heart. Then in the quiet afterglow she felt it, a soft, warm hum deep inside her, like a voice not her own. She lifted her head, eyes wide. Elias! He tensed, silver gaze searching hers. What is it? I said, I feel something inside me, like the moon goddess is waking up. His eyes darkened, not with fear, but with awe. And somewhere in the palace shadows a spy slipped away, carrying the first dangerous whisper of the king's awakening, and the secret he still buried deep. Chapter 3. The Mark of the Goddess. Elias's arms tightened around her, his breath still ragged against her hair. The moonlight painted their sweat-slicked bodies in silver and shadow, the furs beneath them warm and tangled. Liora's words hung in the quiet, like a sacred vow. I feel something inside me, like the moon goddess is waking up. He lifted his head slowly, silver eyes searching hers in the dim light. For a heartbeat, awe flickered across his face. Then something deeper, almost reverent. You're sure? His voice was low, rough from their cries. Liora nodded, pressing a hand to her chest. It's warm, soft, like a voice that isn't mine, but it feels like it belongs to me. Elias exhaled sharply, a sound caught between wonder and fear. He rolled them so she lay beneath him again, his weight braced on his forearms. He studied her face as if seeing her for the first time. The moon goddess doesn't choose lightly, he murmured. If she's stirring inside you, you're more than a maid, more than my mate. He lowered his mouth to hers in a slow, lingering kiss, less frantic than before, but no less consuming. When he pulled back, his thumb traced her lower lip. I need to see it, feel it. He slid down her body, trailing open-mouthed kisses over her collarbone, between her breasts, across the soft plane of her stomach. Liora's fingers threaded into his dark hair, breath hitching as he settled between her thighs once more. But this time he didn't devour her. He pressed his ear to her lower belly, eyes closing as if listening to something only he could hear. His large hand splayed across her skin, warm and possessive. There, he whispered. I feel it too. A pulse, a hum, like moonlight made sound. Liora's heart stuttered. What does it mean? It means you're blessed, he said, voice thick. The goddess speaks through you, and she chose me to protect you. He rose over her again, silver eyes blazing with something fierce and tender. I want to mark you tonight, make you mine in every way the pack will understand. If you'll let me. Liora's breath caught. The claiming bite, the mark that bound mates forever, visible to all, a crescent scar at the base of the neck, infused with the male's essence. She reached up, fingers tracing the line of his jaw. I want it. I want everything with you. A growl rumbled deep in his chest, pure possession. He surged to his feet, lifting her effortlessly. Not here. Not yet. He carried her through a hidden door at the back of the chamber, down a short stone corridor lit only by moonlight. They emerged into the royal bathing chamber, a vast, steaming pool carved from black marble, fed by a natural hot spring. Moonlight streamed through an open skylight, turning the water to liquid silver. Elias set her on her feet beside the pool. Steam curled around them like smoke. He stepped back and shed the last of his clothes, letting them fall. Naked, powerful, aroused again already, he looked like a god carved from night and storm. Get in, he commanded softly. Liora slipped out of her dress, letting it pool at her feet. She stepped into the warm water, sighing as it enveloped her calves, then her thighs, then her waist. Elias followed, the water rippling around his hips. He pulled her against him, skin sliding against skin in the heat. His mouth found hers again, slow, deep drugging. Hands roamed, cupping her breasts, thumbs circling, then sliding down to grip her hips. "I'm going to mark you here," he rasped against her throat. "Where every wolf will see you belong to me." He lifted her, guiding her legs around his waist. The water buoyed them, making every movement languid and sensual. He positioned himself at her entrance, teasing, not entering yet. "Say yes," he growled. "Yes," she breathed. "Please." He thrust up in one slow, deep glide, filling her completely. They both moaned, the sound echoing off the marble. He moved with devastating control, long, rolling strokes that made water splash around them. His mouth traveled down her neck, licking, sucking, teeth grazing the spot where shoulder met throat. Liora's nails dug into his shoulders. "Elias, I'm going to bite you when you come," he promised, voice dark and ragged. "When you clench around me and scream my name." He angled his hips, hitting that perfect spot inside her over and over. One hand slipped between them, fingers finding her clit, circling with ruthless precision. The pleasure built fast, too fast. Liora's head fell back, exposing her throat. "Elias, oh gods!" "Come for me," he commanded. "Let me feel you shatter." She did, shattering around him with a cry that echoed through the chamber. Her inner walls clenched tight, milking him. The moment her climax peaked, Elias struck. His teeth sank into the soft flesh at the base of her neck, deep enough to mark, not deep enough to harm. Pain flared bright and hot, then melted into molten pleasure as his essence flooded the wound, binding them forever. He roared her name against her skin as he followed her over the edge, spilling deep inside her in hot pulses. They clung to each other in the steaming water, trembling, hearts pounding in unison. Elias licked the fresh mark gently, soothing it with his tongue. When he pulled back, his silver eyes were shining with tears. "You're mine," he whispered, voice cracking. "Forever." Liora touched the mark, warm, tingling, already healing into a perfect crescent scar. "And you're mine," she whispered back. He kissed her again, soft, reverent, full of everything he'd never said aloud. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in each other, the water lapping gently around them, until Elias stiffened. His head snapped up, nostrils flaring. "Someone's close," he growled low. He lifted her from the water, setting her on the marble edge, then stepped out, dripping and lethal. "Stay here." He disappeared down the corridor, naked and furious. Minutes later he returned, expression thunderous, one of the servants. A new one. He was listening at the outer door. Liora's stomach twisted. What did he hear? Elias's jaw clenched. "Enough." He heard me murmuring in my sleep earlier before I woke. Words about guilt, about a debt I can never repay. He met her eyes, the weight of his buried secret heavier than ever. And now that spy knows something he shouldn't. The mark on her neck pulsed once, warm and warning. The moon goddess's voice stirred again, soft, urgent. "Danger comes," it whispered, "and it wears the face of the past." Chapter 4, Shadows of the Past. The bathing chamber fell silent except for the soft drip of water from the marble edges and the faint echo of their breathing. Elias stood dripping on the stone floor, muscles taut, silver eyes scanning the shadows as if the intruder might still be lurking. Liora sat on the edge of the pool, legs still in the warm water, the fresh crescent mark on her neck tingling with every heartbeat, like a living promise between them. He turned back to her, expression stormy but softening the instant their gazes met. "He's gone," Elias said, voice low and rough, but he heard too much. Liora wrapped her arms around herself against the sudden chill that had nothing to do with the air. What exactly did he hear? Elias crossed the distance in 2 strides and knelt before her, water pooling around his knees. He took both her hands in his, pressing them to his chest so she could feel the frantic rhythm beneath. "Enough to know I carry guilt," he admitted, voice cracking on the last word. "Enough to make someone dangerous curious." She searched his face. The man who had just claimed her with such fierce tenderness now looked haunted. Silver eyes shadowed, jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle jump. "Elias?" She lifted one hand to trace the line of his brow, smoothing away the tension. "Whatever it is, you can tell me." He closed his eyes briefly, leaning into her touch like a man starved for comfort. When he opened them again, the vulnerability there stole her breath. Not tonight, he whispered. Tonight I just want to hold you. Feel you safe in my arms. Let me pretend for a few more hours that the past can't touch us. Liora's heart ached at the raw plea in his voice. She nodded, sliding her arms around his neck. He lifted her from the water as if she were made of moonlight, carrying her back to the royal chambers. The furs were still warm from their earlier passion. He laid her down gently, then climbed in beside her, pulling her against his chest. His arms wrapped around her like iron bands, protective, possessive, desperate. They lay tangled together in silence for a long time, skin to skin, hearts beating in uneven rhythm. Elias buried his face in her hair, inhaling her scent as though it were the only thing anchoring him. I never thought I could feel this, he murmured against her temple. Like I'm whole again. Like I deserve to be whole. Liora turned in his arms, pressing her forehead to his. You do deserve it. Whatever happened before, it doesn't change what you are to me now. His breath hitched. For a moment she thought he might speak, might finally let the secret spill. But he only tightened his hold, as if afraid she would vanish if he loosened his grip. They stayed like that until the moon began to fade from the sky. Sleep came slowly, fitfully, and in the quiet hours before dawn, Elias's arms trembled around her. He didn't sleep. He watched her instead, memorizing the curve of her lashes, the soft rise and fall of her breathing, the fresh mark on her neck that glowed faintly in the dying moonlight. And in the darkest corner of his mind, the guilt whispered louder than ever. By morning, the palace buzzed with a different energy. The pack could sense it. The king had taken a mate. Whispers followed them through the corridors. Awe, curiosity, a touch of envy. Elias walked with Liora at his side, one possessive hand resting at the small of her back. Every time someone's gaze lingered too long on the mark at her throat, a low growl rumbled in his chest. The council meeting that afternoon was tense. Elias sat at the head of the long stone table, Liora seated to his right, officially his mate now, no longer a servant. The elders and betas watched her with guarded respect, but their eyes kept darting to the king. Reports came in, border skirmishes with the rival Blackthorn pack growing bolder, scouts missing, whispers of a spy in their midst. Elias listened, jaw tight, silver eyes cold. But beneath the table his hand found Liora's and squeezed. Hard, almost painfully. She squeezed back, offering silent strength. When the meeting ended and the others filed out, Elias remained seated staring at the empty table. Liora touched his arm. You're carrying something too heavy alone. He looked at her then, really looked, and the mask cracked just a fraction. I don't know how to tell you without losing you, he said, voice barely above a whisper. She leaned closer, brushing her lips against his temple. You won't lose me, whatever it is, and we face it together. For a heartbeat, hope flickered in his eyes. Then it dimmed again. He stood abruptly, pulling her up with him. Come with me. He led her through winding corridors to a small hidden study deep within the palace. Walls lined with ancient scrolls and maps, a single window overlooking the moonlit forest. He closed the door behind them, leaning against it as if bracing himself. I need to show you something, he said. He crossed to a locked drawer, hesitated, then opened it with shaking hands. Inside lay an old folded parchment yellowed with age. He didn't hand it to her. He simply stared at it, shoulders rigid. Liora stepped closer. What is it? His voice was raw when he finally spoke. A record from years ago before I became king. He unfolded the parchment just enough for her to see the top line. Names written in faded ink. Her parents' names. Liora's breath stopped. Elias's hand trembled so badly the paper crinkled. His voice broke. I can't say it yet. But I need you to know. The debt I carry, it's tied to them. To you. Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she reached out and gently closed the drawer, sealing the parchment inside again. Then she wrapped her arms around him, pressing her cheek to his chest. We don't have to face it tonight, she whispered, but we will face it soon. Elias's arms came around her like a man clinging to salvation. He buried his face in her hair, shoulders shaking with silent, wrenching sobs he refused to let escape. Outside the study door, unseen in the shadows, the spy watched. And in his pocket burned a small scrap of parchment, copied words from the king's guilty sleep. Proof. Enough to start a war. Chapter 5. The first crack. The study door closed behind them with a soft final click, sealing the weight of the parchment and the unspoken truth. Inside the drawer once more. Elias stood frozen for a long moment, back to the door, broad shoulders rigid as if bracing against an invisible storm. Liora watched him, heart twisting at the way his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. She stepped forward slowly, reaching out to touch his arm. He flinched just a fraction before turning to face her. His silver eyes were stormy, shadowed with something raw and aching. "I almost told you," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "Right then, and I couldn't." Liora didn't push. Instead, she slid her arms around his waist and pressed her cheek to his chest. His heart thundered beneath her ear, fast, unsteady, like a trapped animal. "Then don't," she murmured. "Not until you're ready. I'm not going anywhere." Elias exhaled shakily, arms coming around her like he was afraid she might slip away. He buried his face in her hair, inhaling deeply, as though her scent alone could keep the darkness at bay. They stayed like that until the first pale light of dawn crept through the window. When they finally left the study, Elias walked beside her through the waking palace corridors, one hand resting possessively at the small of her back. But the touch felt different now, less certain, more desperate. The days that followed were a quiet unraveling. Elias grew distant, not in cruelty, but in the way a man might pull away from a flame he feared would burn him. He still held her at night, still woke her with soft kisses to her temple, still growled low when anyone looked at her too long. But there were moments, small, heartbreaking ones, when his gaze would drift, lost in shadows only he could see. He spent longer hours in council, poring over maps and reports of the Blackthorn Pack's movements. He trained harder in the sparring yard, shirtless and ruthless, until sweat poured down his scarred back and his knuckles bled. Liora watched from the balcony once, heart aching as he fought like a man trying to outrun his own demons. At night, when the palace quieted, he would pull her close and hold her so tightly it almost hurt. His hands would roam her back, her sides, her hair, reverent, almost worshipful, as though memorizing every inch of her before the inevitable storm arrived. One evening, after a particularly brutal training session, he found her in their chambers, brushing her hair by the firelight. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching her, expression unreadable. Liora set the brush aside and turned to him. "You're hurting," she said softly. Not a question. Elias crossed the room in 3 strides and dropped to his knees before her chair. He rested his forehead against her knees, hands gripping her thighs, not possessively, but like a man clinging to a lifeline. "I don't deserve this," he whispered. "I don't deserve you." Tears stung Leora's eyes. She cupped his face, tilting it up so he had to meet her gaze. "You do," she said fiercely. "Whatever you think you've done, whatever guilt you carry, it doesn't erase the man who held me like I was the only thing keeping him alive. The man who woke up crying because he could finally feel again." His silver eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "I'm afraid," he admitted, voice cracking. "Afraid that when you know, you'll look at me the way I look at myself. With hate." Liora leaned down, pressing her forehead to his. "Then let me show you how I look at you," she whispered. She kissed him, slow, deep, achingly tender, not with fire but with quiet, unshakable devotion. Elias groaned against her mouth, hands sliding up her back to cradle her closer. The kiss stretched on, endless and healing, until they were both trembling. When they parted, he rested his head in her lap, letting her fingers comb through his dark hair. "I love you," he said so quietly she almost didn't hear it. "More than I've ever loved anything, and that's why it hurts so much." Leora's heart cracked open at the raw confession. She bent to kiss the top of his head. "I love you too," she whispered back, "and nothing you tell me will change that." He closed his eyes, a single tear slipping free to trace down his cheek. They stayed like that for hours, him on his knees before her, her fingers stroking his hair, the fire crackling softly in the hearth. For the first time in days, the distance between them shrank to nothing. But the next morning, everything shifted again. Liora rose early to fetch water from the spring near the eastern wing. As she passed Elias's private study, the door was ajar, just a crack. Curiosity tugged at her. She pushed it open. The room was dim, lit only by a single candle. On the desk lay the same folded parchment from the night before, now open, as though Elias had been staring at it again in the dark. Her parents' names stared up at her, and beneath them in Elias's bold, unmistakable handwriting a single line. I ordered their deaths, for gold, for power. May the goddess forgive me. Liora's breath stopped. Her hand trembled as she reached out, fingertips brushing the ink. Behind her, the door creaked. Elias stood in the doorway, face pale, eyes wide with horror. Liora. She turned slowly, tears already streaming down her cheeks. Tell me it isn't true, she whispered. But the guilt written across his face told her everything she needed to know. Chapter 6, Truth and Tears. Elias stood frozen in the doorway, the candlelight carving harsh shadows across his face. The parchment lay open on the desk between them like an accusation made of ink and time. Liora's hand hovered above it, fingertips still trembling from where they had brushed her parents' names. Tell me it isn't true, she whispered again, voice cracking on the last word. Elias's throat worked. He took one step forward, then stopped, as if crossing that threshold would make the truth irreversible. It is true, he said at last, the words scraping out of him like broken glass. I ordered it, I gave the command. The room seemed to shrink. The air grew thick, heavy with the weight of years unspoken. Liora's knees buckled. She gripped the edge of the desk to keep from falling. Tears spilled freely now, silent and hot, tracing paths down her cheeks. Why? The single word came out small, almost childlike. Elias's shoulders slumped. He looked smaller somehow, less like the towering, unbreakable king and more like a man carrying a mountain on his back. I was young, hungry for power. The river gold, and it was supposed to fund an army, secure the borders, prove I was strong enough to hold the throne. His voice dropped to a ragged whisper. I told myself they were just names, obstacles. I told myself the pack needed it more than they did. He took another step closer, hands raised as if to reach for her, then dropped them helplessly at his sides. I was wrong, he said. I was so wrong. Liora stared at the parchment, at the bold strokes of his handwriting confessing the sin she had carried her whole life without knowing the face behind it. You killed them, she said softly. Not an accusation, just a fact laid bare between them. Yes. The word hung there, final and devastating. For a long moment neither moved. Then Elias sank slowly to his knees before her, knees hitting the stone floor with a dull thud. He bowed his head, dark hair falling forward to hide his face. I have hated myself every day since, he said, voice thick with unshed tears. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw their blood on my hands. Every time the curse took another king, I thought it was justice, that I deserved to fade, to lose everything. He lifted his head then, silver eyes glistening, raw and pleading. And then you came, he whispered. One kiss and you brought me back from the dead. You gave me life when I didn't deserve it. You gave me love when I had none left to give. A sob tore from his throat, low, broken, the sound of a man finally shattering. I'm so sorry, Liora. I'm so sorry I took them from you. I'm so sorry I let my greed destroy the only family you had. Tears streamed down his face now, silent at first, then wrenching, his powerful frame shaking with the force of them. Liora watched him cry, watched the Heartless Lycan King, the man who had ruled with iron and ice, break completely at her feet. Something inside her cracked open. She slid from the chair and knelt in front of him, mirroring his posture. Her hands rose, trembling, to cup his face. She brushed away his tears with her thumbs, feeling the heat of them against her skin. Look at me, she whispered. He did, eyes red-rimmed, vulnerable in a way she had never seen. I hate what you did, she said, voice steady despite the tears still falling. I hate that my parents are gone because of you. I hate that I grew up alone because of a choice you made. Elias flinched as though she had struck him, but he didn't look away. But I also love you, she continued, the words aching as they left her. I love the man who woke up crying because he could finally feel again. The man who held me like I was the only thing keeping him from falling apart. The man who would rather die than hurt me now. She leaned forward, pressing her forehead to his. "I don't know how to forgive you yet," she whispered. "But I know I can't stop loving you. And maybe that's the beginning." A shudder ran through him. He reached up, covering her hands with his own, holding them against his cheeks as fresh tears fell. "I don't deserve your forgiveness," he choked out, "but I will spend the rest of my life earning it every day, every breath." Liora closed her eyes, letting their tears mingle where their skin touched. "Then start now," she said softly. "Stay with me, fight with me. Let me help carry this instead of running from it." He nodded against her forehead, small jerky movements. They stayed like that on the cold stone floor, foreheads pressed together, hands entwined, crying together in the dim candlelight. Two broken souls finding the first fragile threads of healing in each other's pain. Outside the study, the palace slept. But in the shadows beyond the walls, the spy slipped away once more, carrying not just whispers now, but cold, hard proof of the king's darkest secret. And in the rival Blackthorn Pack's war tents, a new message was already being written, a demand, a threat, a declaration of war. Chapter 7, Battle for the Heart. The silence in the study stretched thin and brittle, broken only by the soft crackle of the dying candle. Liora and Elias remained on their knees, foreheads still touching, hands still clasped. Two shattered hearts refusing to let go, even as the truth tore through them like a blade. Then from the corridor outside came the sound of running boots, urgent, heavy. The door burst open. One of Elias's most trusted betas, Kale, stood there, chest heaving, face grim. "My king," he said, voice tight. "The Blackthorn Pack has sent an emissary. He waits in the Great Hall. He carries a sealed scroll, and he demands an immediate audience." Elias lifted his head slowly, silver eyes hardening into steel. The vulnerability vanished in an instant, replaced by the cold, commanding mask of the Lycan King. "Tell him we come," he said, voice low and lethal. Kyle bowed and vanished. Elias helped Liora to her feet, his touch gentle but steady. For a moment he searched her face, eyes shadowed with fear, not for himself, but for her. "I won't let them touch you," he vowed quietly, "no matter what they demand." Liora nodded, wiping the last of her tears with the back of her hand. "We face this together, remember?" He pressed a fierce kiss to her forehead, brief, burning, then took her hand and led her out. The great hall was packed with the pack's highest warriors and elders. Tension crackled in the air like lightning about to strike. At the far end stood the Blackthorn emissary, a tall, lean wolf with cruel eyes and a scar bisecting his cheek. He wore the black and crimson colors of his pack, and in his hand he held a scroll sealed with dark wax. Elias strode forward, Liora at his side, head high. The mark on her neck gleamed faintly in the torchlight. The emissary's gaze flicked to the mark, then to Liora, and a slow, mocking smile curled his lips. "King Elias Stormfang," he said, voice dripping with false respect. "And the new queen, the orphan maid who somehow tamed the heartless beast." Elias's growl rumbled low enough to vibrate the stone floor. "Speak your message and leave," he said coldly. The emissary unrolled the scroll with deliberate slowness. "From Alpha Darius of the Blackthorn Pack, the Silvermoon throne has grown weak. Rumors of a broken king and a cursed mate have reached our borders. To prevent unnecessary bloodshed, we offer terms." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Yield the throne, surrender your lands, and deliver the girl, the one marked by the moon goddess, to our Alpha as tribute. In exchange, we will allow your pack to live as vassals under Blackthorn rule." A roar of fury erupted from the Silvermoon wolves. Elias stepped forward, eyes blazing molten silver. "You dare come into my hall and demand my mate?" His voice was quiet, dangerously quiet. "You dare threaten her?" The emissary lifted his chin. "We know your secret, King. We know what you did to her parents. We know the guilt that eats at you. And we know she has only just learned the truth. How long before she turns from you? How long before your pack sees you for the monster you are?" Liora felt the words like a slap. But instead of shrinking, something inside her ignited. The soft hum of the moon goddess stirred again, stronger now, warmer, like a heartbeat echoing her own. She stepped forward, placing herself between Elias and the emissary. "I am no tribute," she said, voice clear and steady. "I am Liora Stormfang, mate to Elias, queen of the Silvermoon Pack. And I choose my king. I choose my home. I choose him. Every part of him, even the broken ones. Elias's breath caught. He looked at her as if seeing her for the first time, pride, awe, and fierce love blazing in his eyes. The emissary laughed, short, cruel. Then you choose war. He tossed the scroll at Elias's feet and turned to leave. Elias caught it mid-air, crushed it in his fist, and let the pieces fall. Tell your Alpha, he said, voice ringing through the hall, that if he wants my mate, he will have to rip her from my dead hands. The emissary paused at the doors, glancing back with a smirk. War it is. He vanished into the night. The hall erupted. Wolves snarling, fists pounding stone, howls rising in defiance. Elias turned to Liora, pulling her close, shielding her from the chaos with his body. You didn't have to do that, he whispered against her hair. You could have stayed silent. She looked up at him, eyes shining with tears and fire. I won't let them use my pain against you, she said. Not anymore. He cupped her face, thumbs brushing away the tracks of her tears. I love you, he said, voice rough with emotion. More than life, more than the throne, more than anything. She rose on her toes and kissed him, fierce, claiming, right there in front of the entire pack. When they parted, Elias addressed the hall, voice carrying like thunder. Prepare for war. We will not yield. We will not break. And we will protect our queen, our heart, with every drop of blood in our veins. A deafening roar answered him. Liora felt the moon goddess's power surge inside her, bright, fierce, ready. She looked at Elias, hand still clasped in his. Together, she said. He squeezed her hand. Together. But as the pack dispersed to prepare for battle, a scout burst through the doors, bloodied, breathless. My king, the Blackthorn forces are already moving. They'll be at our borders by dawn. Elias's jaw tightened. Then we meet them on the field. He looked down at Liora, eyes fierce with love and fear. Stay inside the palace walls, stay safe. Liora shook her head. No, she said softly, I fight with you. His eyes widened. Liora, I'm not just your mate, she said, voice steady. I'm the voice of the goddess and she's waking up. If war is coming, I won't hide. Elias stared at her for a long moment, then nodded once, pride and terror warring in his gaze. Then we fight side by side. He pulled her into a crushing embrace, lips pressing to her temple. I won't lose you, he whispered. I can't. She held him just as tightly. You won't. But outside, the first war drums of the Blackthorn pack began to beat. Low, ominous, rolling across the valley like the promise of blood. Chapter 8. The Goddess's Mercy. The war drums of the Blackthorn pack rolled across the valley like distant thunder, growing louder with every heartbeat. Elias and Liora stood together on the balcony overlooking the Silver Moon stronghold, the first streaks of dawn painting the sky in blood and gold. Below them, the pack moved with grim efficiency. Warriors sharpening blades, archers stringing bows, healers preparing salves and bandages. Elias's hand tightened around Liora's, his knuckles white. I should have sent you deeper into the mountains, he said, voice low and strained. Somewhere safe. Liora turned to him, eyes fierce. There is no safe place if you fall. I fight with you, Elias, not behind you. He looked down at her, the fresh crescent mark on her neck glowing faintly in the rising light, and something in his expression cracked open. Raw fear, fierce love, and a desperate need to protect. Before he could speak, a scout burst onto the balcony, blood streaking his face and tunic. My king, the Blackthorn vanguard has broken through the outer ridge. They're advancing fast, hundreds of them. Alpha Darius leads them himself. Elias's jaw clenched. How long? Minutes, maybe less. Elias turned to Liora, cupping her face with both hands. His silver eyes burned with everything he couldn't say. Stay close to me, he whispered. Promise me. I promise. He kissed her, hard, desperate, pouring every unspoken word into it. Then he pulled away, transforming in one fluid motion, bones shifting, fur rippling across his skin, until the massive silver wolf stood before her, eyes still unmistakably his. Liora placed her hand on his broad head, fingers sinking into the thick fur. I'm right here. The wolf nuzzled her palm once, then turned and leaped from the balcony, landing on the courtyard below with a thunderous impact. Howls rose in answer as the Silver Moon warriors rallied behind their king. Liora followed, heart pounding, the hum of the moon goddess inside her growing louder, brighter, like a star being born. The battle exploded at the gates. Blackthorn wolves poured through the breach, dark-furred, snarling, relentless. Elias met them head-on, a silver storm of fury and teeth. He tore through their ranks, blood staining his muzzle, but they kept coming, wave after wave. Liora stayed at the rear with the healers and archers, directing the wounded, whispering words of comfort. But every time she saw Elias take a hit, every slash, every bite, something inside her screamed. Then it happened. A massive black wolf, Alpha Darius himself, barreled through the chaos, straight for Elias. They collided in a brutal tangle of claws and fangs. Darius was larger, older, battle-hardened. He drove Elias back, teeth sinking deep into the silver wolf's shoulder. Elias roared in pain, staggering. Liora's world narrowed to that single moment. "No!" The cry tore from her throat. The hum inside her ignited, exploding into blinding white light. Power surged through her veins like liquid moonlight. She didn't think. She ran, straight into the heart of the battle. Wolves parted before her as if compelled. She reached Elias just as Darius reared back for the killing blow. Liora threw herself between them. "Stop!" The word wasn't just sound, it was command. It carried the full weight of the moon goddess's voice. A shockwave of silver light erupted from her, knocking every wolf within 20 feet off their paws. Darius staggered, eyes wide with shock. Liora dropped to her knees beside Elias. Blood poured from the deep wound in his shoulder. His silver fur was matted dark, his breathing shallow. "Elias." Her hands pressed to the wound, tears streaming down her face. "Stay with me, please." The light inside her flared brighter. She felt it, warm, endless, healing, pouring out of her palms and into his torn flesh. The moon goddess's voice whispered through her mind, soft but unbreakable. "My child, let my mercy flow." The wound began to close. Flesh knit together. Blood slowed to a trickle. Elias's breathing steadied. He lifted his head weakly, silver eyes finding hers. "Liora." She sobbed with relief, pressing her forehead to his. "I've got you," she whispered. "I've got you." Around them, the battlefield had fallen strangely quiet. Blackthorn wolves stared in awe. Silver moon warriors howled in triumph. Darius shifted back to human form, staggering, bloodied, staring at Liora like she was something holy and terrifying. "The goddess speaks through her," he rasped. "She is divine." Elias shifted back as well, human again, still bleeding but alive. He pulled Liora into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "You saved me," he choked out. "You could have died." "I would die for you," she said simply. "But I'd rather live with you." He buried his face in her neck right over the mark he had given her and wept. Quiet, wrenching sobs of relief and gratitude. The blackthorn wolves began to retreat, slowly at first, then faster, their alpha calling the withdrawal. Darius paused at the broken gates, looking back at the pair on the blood-soaked ground. "This isn't over," he said, voice carrying across the field. "But today the goddess has spoken." He turned and vanished into the trees. Elias lifted Liora into his arms, cradling her against his chest as he staggered to his feet. The pack surrounded them, howling, cheering, tears streaming down hardened faces. They had won the day, but as Elias carried her back toward the palace, Liora felt the goddess's light dim slightly, leaving behind a quiet, urgent whisper. "The true darkness still waits. A shadow older than the curse. A sorcerer who pulled the strings long ago." Elias paused mid-step as if he had heard it too. He looked down at her, eyes wide. "Liora, what did you see?" She swallowed, voice trembling. "A vision. Your past sin. It wasn't just greed. Something manipulated you, forced your hand." His face drained of color. "Then the real enemy isn't Darius," he whispered. Liora nodded, gripping his shoulders. "It's someone who wanted us broken from the beginning." Chapter 9, The True Enemy. The war drums had fallen silent, replaced by the low moans of the wounded and the crackle of healing fires in the courtyard. Elias carried Liora through the palace gates, her body cradled against his chest, the faint glow of the goddess's light still shimmering around her like a soft halo. His own wound had closed under her touch, but the ache in his heart was far deeper. He didn't stop until they reached the royal chambers. Gently he laid her on the furs, then knelt beside the bed, taking both her hands in his. "Liora," he whispered, voice hoarse from shouting orders and from the fear that still gripped him. "What did you see?" Tell me everything." She sat up slowly, the exhaustion of channeling so much power etched into her face. But her eyes, bright with the moon goddess's lingering presence, were steady. "In the vision, I saw you years ago, young, hungry, standing on the riverbank. The gold glittered in the water, but there was something else. A shadow, not a wolf, not a man, a sorcerer cloaked in darkness. He whispered in your ear, words I couldn't hear, but I felt them. They twisted your thoughts, fed your greed, made you believe the only path to power was through blood." Elias's breath caught. He bowed his head, silver eyes closing as memory crashed over him. "I remembered the voice in the dark. I thought it was my own ambition, but it felt foreign, cold, like ice in my veins." He looked up at her, face pale. "I thought the guilt was mine alone, that I had chosen it, but if he manipulated me..." Liora reached out, cupping his cheek. "It doesn't erase what happened, but it means you weren't the only one who sinned that day. Someone wanted us broken from the beginning, someone who knew what we could become together." A low growl rumbled in Elias's chest, not anger at her, but at the invisible enemy who had pulled strings for years. "Then we find him," he said, voice hard. "We end this." Before Liora could answer, the doors flew open. Kale burst in, face grim, blood still streaking his armor. "My king, there's been a betrayal." Elias surged to his feet. "Speak. One of our own. Elder Thorn. He's been feeding information to Blackthorn for months. We caught him trying to slip out during the battle. He confessed under pressure." Liora's stomach dropped. Elder Thorn, one of the oldest council members, the one who had always spoken of tradition and loyalty. Kale's voice lowered. He said he was promised power, promised a place at the new ruler's side, but he wasn't working for Darius. Elias's eyes narrowed. "Then who?" Kale swallowed. "A sorcerer. One who calls himself Vera. He claims to have orchestrated everything. The curse on the throne, the manipulations, even the death of Liora's parents. Thorn said Vera wanted the Silver Moon Pack weakened, so he could claim the ancient wellspring beneath our lands, the source of the moon goddess's power." Liora felt the hum inside her flare in warning, bright, angry. "The wellspring," she whispered. "If he corrupts it..." Elias's face darkened. "He could sever the goddess's connection to all wolves. End our kind." He turned to Kale. "Where is Thorn now?" "Locked in the dungeons. He's begging to speak to you. Says he has a message from Vera." Elias looked at Liora. "We go together." They descended into the cold stone dungeons beneath the palace. The air was damp, thick with the scent of iron and fear. Thorn sat chained to the wall, old face gaunt, eyes wild. When he saw Elias and Liora, he flinched. "You came," he rasped. "Speak," Elias commanded, voice like steel. Thorn's gaze darted to Liora. "He wants her, the vessel. He says if you deliver her to the Blackthorn border at the next full moon, he will lift the curse forever. No more kings dying, no more fading wolves. Your reign will be eternal." Elias's growl shook the stones. "And if I refuse?" Thorn's voice dropped to a whisper. "Then he will come himself, and he will take her, and everything you love." Liora stepped forward, the mark on her neck pulsing with light. "Tell your master," she said, voice calm but carrying the goddess's echo, "that I am no one's prize, and if he wants me, he will have to face me." Thorn's eyes widened in terror. He began to tremble. "He's already coming," he whispered. "He's closer than you think." Elias snarled and turned to the guards. "Keep him locked away." As they climbed the stairs back to the light, Elias pulled Liora close, arms wrapping around her protectively. "I won't let him touch you," he vowed, voice fierce. "I swear it on my life." Liora rested her head against his chest, listening to the thunder of his heart. "I know," she said softly, "but we can't hide from this. We have to face him." Elias nodded, jaw tight. "Then we prepare, we rally the pack, we defend our home." He kissed her forehead, long, lingering, full of love and fear. But as they reached the top of the stairs, a cold wind swept through the corridor, unnatural, carrying the faint scent of ash and old magic. Somewhere in the shadows, a low, mocking laugh echoed. And then it was gone. Liora shivered. "He's already here," she whispered. Elias's arms tightened around her. "Then let him come." Chapter 10. Eternal Souls. The cold wind died as quickly as it had come, leaving only silence in its wake. Elias and Liora stood motionless in the corridor, his arms still wrapped protectively around her, her cheek pressed to his chest. The faint scent of ash and old magic lingered like a promise of violence. Elias pulled back just enough to look into her eyes, silver gaze fierce with determination. "We end this tonight," he said, voice low and unyielding, "before the next full moon rises. Before he can take you from me." Liora nodded, the hum of the moon goddess inside her steady now, strong, certain, like a heartbeat that matched his own. "Then we go to the wellspring," she said. "That's where he'll be waiting. He wants its power, we take it back." Elias cupped her face, thumbs brushing her cheeks. "If anything happens to you—" "It won't," she interrupted softly. "We face him together like we promised." He kissed her then, slow, deep, full of every unspoken fear and every unbreakable vow. When they parted, his forehead rested against hers. "I love you," he whispered. "More than the throne, more than the pack, more than my own life." "I love you too," she answered, "always." They moved as one, rallying the pack's most trusted warriors, arming themselves with silver blades and moon-blessed runes. Kale led a small, elite force to guard the palace and the borders. The rest followed Elias and Liora into the ancient tunnels beneath the stronghold, toward the hidden wellspring that had sustained the Silver Moon Pack for centuries. The deeper they descended, the stronger the pull of dark magic became, cold, oily, pressing against their skin. Torches flickered unnaturally, casting long, twisted shadows. At last they reached the cavern. The wellspring glowed at its center, a pool of pure liquid moonlight pulsing with soft silver light. But the air around it was wrong, tainted. And standing at the edge, cloaked in swirling black mist, was Vera. He was tall, impossibly thin, skin pale as bone, eyes burning with crimson fire. Power rolled off him in waves, ancient, hungry, cruel. "You came," he said, voice smooth as silk over razors. "How predictable." Elias stepped forward, placing himself between Liora and the sorcerer. His warriors fanned out behind them, weapons drawn. "You've played your games long enough," Elias growled. "Release your hold on my pack, on my mate, or die." Vera laughed, a low, chilling sound that echoed off the cavern walls. "I orchestrated everything, King. The curse, your greed, the deaths that broke her. Also, the wellspring would be left unguarded, so I could claim its power and remake this world in shadow." Liora felt the goddess's light flare inside her, bright, furious. "You will never have it," she said, stepping forward. The mark on her neck blazed with silver fire. Vera's crimson eyes narrowed. "Then I will take it from your corpse." He raised a hand. Dark tendrils of magic lashed out, black lightning aimed straight for Liora. Elias roared and leaped in front of her, taking the full force of the strike. Pain tore through him, but he didn't fall. He staggered, blood trickling from his mouth, but his silver eyes never left hers. "Liora, now!" She understood. She ran forward, hands outstretched. The goddess's power surged through her, pure, blinding, unstoppable. Silver light exploded from her palms, meeting Vera's darkness in a violent clash. The cavern shook, rocks cracked. The wellspring flared brighter as if answering her call. Vera snarled, pushing harder. "You think you can stand against me, girl?" But Liora wasn't alone. Elias staggered to her side, bloodied but unbroken. He placed his hand over hers, lending his strength, his wolf, his heart, his love. Together their light grew brighter than the darkness could bear. With a final desperate scream, Vera's form shattered, dissolving into smoke and ash that the silver light consumed until nothing remained. Silence fell. The wellspring settled, its glow pure and steady once more. Elias collapsed to his knees. Liora dropped beside him, hands flying to his wounds. The goddess's light flowed through her again, gentle now, healing. The gashes closed. The blood faded. He opened his eyes, silver gaze finding hers. "You did it," he whispered. "We did it," she corrected, tears streaming down her face. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could feel every beat of his heart. The curse was broken, permanently. No more dying kings, no more fading wolves. The pack would thrive for generations. Months later, under a full blood moon, Elias and Liora stood together on the balcony overlooking their lands. The pack gathered below, howling in celebration. Liora rested her hand on the gentle swell of her belly. Their child, conceived in love, blessed by the goddess. Elias wrapped his arms around her from behind, chin resting on her shoulder. "Forever," he murmured against her ear. She turned in his arms, rising on her toes to kiss him, slow, tender, eternal. "Forever," she echoed. And beneath the moon's watchful gaze, the Heartless Lycan King, once broken, once lost, finally found his soul. In her. In them. In the future they would build together. What did you think of Elias and Liora's journey? Did the moment he broke down in tears hit you right in the chest? Did the way she forgave him and fought beside him make your heart race? And that final scene under the blood moon, did it leave you smiling through tears? If this story wrapped around your soul the way it did mine, then I need to know. Drop me in the comments if you felt every single emotion. Tell me your favorite moment below. Was it the stolen kiss that woke his wolf? The raw confession in the study? Or the way they claimed their forever under the moon? And if you're dying for more werewolf romance like this, twisted secrets, soul-shattering love, epic battles, and shies that feel earned, just say part 2 or more and I'll bring you the next chapter of their world, or a brand new tale that will steal your heart all over again. Don't leave me hanging. Which part made you cry?